Hello everybody, this is Brooks Lindsay, the founder and editor of DebatePedia.org. I wanted today to walk you through the arguments involved in a major debate that's going on nationally and in Arizona, and it's on Arizona's immigration law. So this is SB 1070, or Senate Bill 1070. It was signed into law by Arizona Governor Jan Brewer in late April of 2010. And it is a hardline bill designed to identify, charge, and potentially deport illegal immigrants currently residing in Arizona. So it does a couple things. It makes illegal immigration a state crime. It mandates that immigrants carry their papers at all times. It mandates that police verify the status of individuals during the course of traffic stops or other law enforcement actions. And this would be when there is a reasonable suspicion that that person might be an illegal alien. And the legislation also ratchets up punishments on those that would transport or harbor illegal immigrants. And finally, it allows citizens to actually sue police officers that they think are not enforcing the law. So in general, again, it's a fairly hardline piece of law, and one could say that Arizona has picked a side of the larger immigration debate that's involved in the United States. And that is in favor of deportation, finding and charging and jailing illegal immigrants, instead of a path to citizenship and incorporating illegal immigrants into American society, which is the other side of the debate. The main argument in favor of this position, of this side of the debate, of Arizona's laws side of the debate, is enforcing sovereign law. So the idea is that illegal immigrants have broken the law, that they are therefore criminals, and that therefore they should be found, charged, jailed, and deported. It's as simple as that. So Stan Sodero wrote in the Oakland Tribune once, quote, "The issue is not ethnic origin, it is criminal trespass. The illegal immigrant has chosen to violate our country's laws simply to exploit our free and generous society. Mexico would never tolerate such behavior from a foreign nation in its own territory." So again, simple, cut and dry. These are criminals. We can't tolerate it. But deportation as a policy is not entirely feasible. There's one quote from Michael Bloomberg in, this was I think 2006, so it's fairly old, but he says, "The idea of deporting these 11 or 12 million people, about as many as live in the entire state of Pennsylvania, is pure fantasy. Even if we wanted to, it would be physically impossible to carry out. If we attempted it, and it would be perhaps the largest roundup in deportation in world history, the social and economic consequences would be devastating." So for those that are accepting this conclusion that it's impossible to deport all of the illegal immigrants in the country, or in the case of Arizona, it's about 460,000, and that's out of about 7 million, so a lot. For those that accept that conclusion, then the only reasonable course of action would be to integrate these individuals in some way, and usually again through a path to citizenship. But Arizona's law is a little bit more nuanced than that. It's not actually instituting a policy of mass deportation. What it is instituting is a policy of what's called attrition. The idea is that you implement these laws with a number, as many as you can find, illegal immigrants, where you arrest them and you deport them, but it wouldn't be all 460,000 illegal immigrants in Arizona. It would be just a couple thousand, or maybe 10,000. And therefore you create an environment of fear that causes the other illegal immigrants to self-deport. And this, of course, gets around the idea that it's impossible to deport all illegal immigrants, because you're not trying to round them all up in a mass roundup. You're just creating this environment so they self-deport. But opponents of this say, this is not American. This is not American to create this kind of environment of fear, this kind of environment of severe punishment, this kind of severing of communities where a family member who is legal is torn from their family and the community that they've been involved with for many years, and sent home. So Michael Gerson, for example, says in a Washington Post op-ed, "This law creates a suspect class based in part on ethnicity, considered guilty until they prove themselves innocent. It makes it harder for illegal immigrants to live without scrutiny, but it also makes it harder for some American citizens to live without suspicion and humiliation. Americans are not accustomed to the command, 'Your papers, please,' however politely delivered." And President Obama seems to agree. He says, "Now, suddenly, if you don't have your papers, you're going to be harassed." But others say, enforcing the law, how is that un-American? These are the laws on the books. We're going to be enforcing them. How could that possibly be indecent? And we have to think, who are we being compassionate to? Are we being compassionate to illegal immigrants? Or what about the interests of the American citizens themselves, the Arizonans down there? 70% of them support Arizona's law. And part of the reason is they believe that Arizona is under a huge amount of threat right now. There's high crime. There is drug trafficking that's very significant. Many of them believe that there is a terrorist threat that exists with a porous border that they have. Isn't protecting the interests of that 70% of Arizonans an important moral consideration, especially because they are actually legal citizens? In addition, documentation requirements are long-standing, so they've existed since 1940, that any alien, let's say an immigrant who's just working in the United States for some time, that they are required to carry their documents at all times. This is also a requirement in other countries. So Chris Kobach writes in a New York Times op-ed, "Since 1940, it has been a federal crime for aliens to fail to keep such registration documents with them. The Arizona law simply adds a state penalty to what already was a federal crime. Moreover, as anyone who's ever traveled abroad knows, other nations have similar documentation requirements." So they say it's just as easy, pretty much, as carrying your driver's license. Why is this such a significant burden? And others say maybe this trade-off is worth it. So Michael Rosen writes in a Denver Post article, "As a matter of public policy, it's a question of reasonable trade-offs for Arizonans. The downside is that some people, citizens, visitors, immigrants, foreign workers, legally in the state may be inconvenienced if asked to identify themselves or show their immigration documents. The upside is that by cracking down on illegals in their state, Arizonans, including Hispanics who support this law, will be protected from trespass and violent crime and save hundreds of millions of dollars in education, medical, social services, and criminal justice spending associated with illegal immigrants. I'd take that trade-off," he says.